What if I told you that when you're doing, well, nothing at all, your brain is actually in one of its busiest moments, telling a story? We're going to dive into what that story is and why it's maybe one of the most important things your brain does.
All right, so let's start with a feeling we all know. You know those moments when you're just sitting there, staring into space, and your mind just starts to wander.
No, really, think about it for a second. You're in line for a coffee, or you're stuck in traffic, and boom, suddenly you're replaying a conversation you had yesterday, or you're planning out your weekend. What is actually happening inside your head?
For the longest time, science just kind of wrote this off as, mental static, just random noise. But it turns out all that daydreaming, all that reflecting, it's not random at all. It's actually all being orchestrated by a very specific and seriously important network in your brain.
So, how did scientists even find a brain system that does its best work when we're doing nothing? Well, it's a pretty cool story, actually. They found it completely backwards. See, back in the 90s, neuroscientists kept seeing this weird thing on their brain scans. Every time they'd give someone a hard mental task to focus on, like a puzzle, the same set of brain regions would consistently quiet down. They'd go dark.
And this whole discovery just kind of trickled out, piece by piece. It started in 1997, with researchers just noticing this pattern of turning off. Then, in 2001, a team led by Marcus Reichel had this light bulb moment. They thought, wait a minute, what if the brain's baseline, its default state, isn't off at all? What if it's just a different kind of on? And then, boom, 2003, the final piece clicks into place. They showed that these regions weren't just quiet at the same time. They were all talking to each other. They were a real interconnected network.
Which brings us to what this network, now called the default mode network, or DMN for short, is actually doing, and why we call it the mind's storyteller.
Okay, so here's the key idea. Think of the DMN as your brain's, internal operating system. It's the software that runs when you're not focused on the outside world. The moment your attention shifts inward, to your thoughts, your feelings, your memories, that's when the DMN kicks into high gear. So what's on its job list? Well, it's all deeply personal stuff. It's responsible for your sense of self. It's what pulls up that vivid memory of your 10th birthday. It's what helps you imagine what your friend is thinking. And it's what lets you daydream about your next vacation. It's constantly weaving this tapestry of your past, your present, and your future. There's this fantastic quote from Dr. Vinod Menon, who's a huge name in this field. He says, "The DMN creates our internal narrative." And that's just perfect, right? It's literally the voice in your head that is constantly building the story of you, who you are, where you've been, and where you're heading.
So, we've all got one of these networks. But is it the same for a kid as it is for an adult? Turns out, no. The story our brain tells us actually changes as we get older.
What the research shows is pretty fascinating. The strength of this network, basically how well all its parts talk to each other, it follows this kind of inverse U-shape through life. When you're a kid, it's still under construction. The connections are forming. Then, in adulthood, it hits its absolute peak performance. And as we get into our older years, that connectivity starts to gently decline.
And here's something else that's interesting. Studies have also picked up on some subtle differences, on average, between men and women. In general, females tend to show stronger connections inside the DMN itself. Meanwhile, males, again on average, tend to show stronger connections between the DMN and other brain networks that deal with the outside world. And this is a really key point. A strong, well-connected DMN isn't just about spacing out. Because it's so good at grabbing memories and imagining the future, a stronger network is actually linked to better performance on all sorts of cognitive tasks. It might even be what helps us have those aha moments, connecting different ideas to solve a problem.
Okay, let's zoom out. Let's pull all this together. Why should we care about this quiet, internal network? What's the big picture here?
Look, the DMN isn't just another brain network. You could argue it is the network of the self.
It is absolutely fundamental to your identity, to how you navigate your social world, to how you remember your past and imagine your future. It's the very machinery of consciousness, the engine that writes the story of your life.
And from a practical standpoint, understanding how a healthy DMN works is incredibly important for medicine. Why? Because when this network starts to have problems, when it goes offline or becomes dysfunctional, we see that linked to so many different conditions, everything from Alzheimer's to depression. So, figuring out that normal baseline is a critical first step to helping people.
So, next time you catch yourself zoning out, staring out the window, just remember this. That's not your brain being lazy. That's your default mode network, your personal storyteller, doing its most important work, weaving all your experiences together to create the story of you.
Which leaves us with one last thought to chew on. As you've been listening to this, focusing on this explainer, your own storyteller has been there, humming along in the background. So the real question is, what story is it telling you right now?